Jordy, T-Bob, thank you guys for having me, man.
Absolutely. Before we get into the Pelicans, before we start talking everything New Orleans, Zion, and everything that's going on with the franchise down there, your overview of this weekend in the NBA. Tons of news with Kawhi going to the Clippers, Paul George being traded out, Boogie going to the Lakers. Everything, all in all, what was your evaluation of the weekend?
Well, first and foremost, I'm glad it's over.
Yeah.
You have to kind of give Kawhi credit because he did what I think a lot of us would do. And when we have a big decision to make moving forward, that he took his time. And it seemed like forever because most of the other big-time free agents we knew where they were going prior to even free agency opening. So we knew where Kevin Durant was going. We knew where Kyrie was going, and Kemba Walker and Klay Thompson and all these guys. We knew where they were going, and Kawhi Leonard took his time because it's a big decision. I think the Paul George situation caught a lot of people off guard. I know when I woke up in the morning and saw that the Clippers acquired not just Kawhi Leonard but also Paul George was surprising. But to me, now the NBA has more of a 90s feel to it.
Yeah.
Now you have more one or two superstars on the team. You know, you have the Jordan and Pippins and the Birds and McHale's and, you know, the Isaiah Thomas and Joe Dumars. So it's not that super team is not around anymore. You know, where you have 4 or 5 superstars all on the same team. So it's kind of nice to see the parity back within the league.
Yeah, I mean, look, you just look at the Western Conference right now, and with Golden State taking a couple steps back, it just seems wide open, like you're saying, Antonio, in a way that hasn't been for about a decade. That said, if you had to choose a favorite, is that the Los Angeles Clippers at this point?
I think right now, as of today, and obviously we don't know how things play out on paper. We have no idea. But because of the Clippers and the year that they had this past year, Kevin Durant will be out for another year because Toronto obviously took a big step backwards losing Kawhi Leonard. But because of the Clippers and the year that they had prior to acquiring Paul George and also Kawhi Leonard, I think right now they have to be the favorite.
Antonio Daniels joining us here, new color commentator for the New Orleans Pelicans, played 13 years in the league, picked up a ring along the way with the San Antonio Spurs. You can find him on Twitter at adaniels33. Pelicans have a great feel around them right now. If it's not just David Griffin, if it's the medical staff, if it's Trajan Langdon, Zion Williamson, you being a part of that franchise and having so much experience in the league, what's the feeling of the Pelicans from your point of view?
There's a buzz around New Orleans basketball like there's never been. And there's been some pretty good teams to come in and out of New Orleans, you know, back with the Hornets and even with the Pelicans making it to the playoffs. And even 2 years ago, sweeping Portland first round and losing the Golden State second round. But right now, there has never been a buzz around New Orleans basketball like there is. And it's warranted. It's warranted for all the reasons that you guys just stated. You talk about David Griffin, a complete new regime, which shows that this organization is now heading in a new direction. David Griffin, Trajan Langdon, who a lot of people don't know is somewhat responsible for what just happened in Brooklyn.
Yes.
There's a reason that Brooklyn has turned this thing around in the last 4 years. Trajan Langdon is a big part of that. So you have in your front office now two guys that have a resume for turning around situations and making them positive championship situations, and David Griffin and Trajan Langdon. And then obviously Zion. There has not been a guy that has been this heralded since LeBron James coming out of college. And there have been some pretty good players that have come out since then. But Zion, I'll say this about him. And my experience of NBA basketball as a child, watching NBA basketball, and being blessed enough to have a 13-year career, and then post-NBA, now doing analyst work, I've never seen anybody like Zion. And what I mean by that is this, fellas. I've seen guys that are extremely explosive. I've seen guys that are really big and heavy and strong. But I've never seen this package in one individual, especially at 19 years old. I've seen guys that are big, but they're not agile.
Yeah.
I've seen guys that are agile, but they're not that strong. Zion is the complete package right now. And I'll tell you what, watching that game the other day, oh, Lord have mercy. Oh, man. It is going to be a very, very exciting time in New Orleans.
What's the ceiling on him?
Man, that's a great question. It's hard to put a ceiling on it because we've never seen anyone like him. That's the hard part. People can say Charles Barkley, and as great as Charles Barkley was, one of the best power forwards ever, he was never this explosive. People say Larry Johnson, and Larry Johnson was really, really good as well. Great NBA career, but he was never this explosive and this agile. Both of those guys were great in their own right, but Zion is different. He's different. There are certain guys that the Lord above blesses them with a little bit more for whatever reason, and Zion is one of those guys.
Talking to Antonio Daniels, catch him on the Pelicans telecast doing color this fall. Joining our guy Joel Myers, cannot wait, at ADaniels33. Okay, Antonio, well, I got to ask you another thing about Zion. So David Griffin, he was very upfront about it. Let's talk about this. Look, the conditioning maybe not quite there yet. Our boy was looking a little thick, and we are a huge pro Zion show. So I almost hesitate to ask, but like, what's your interpretation of the thickness that Zion was sporting?
Okay, and the reason I can speak to this is because I've gone through this, not at the rate that Zion has being the number one pick.
Right.
So in 1997, I was the 4th overall pick, and I know what it's like. So when you are eliminated from college contention, at that time, basically the draft process starts for you. So you're not really doing a whole lot of basketball. You're not doing a whole lot. Understand what you've been doing all year long. Two-a-days, all these other things that are going on, NCAA tournament, you're playing constant basketball. Then when the season's over, you take a little bit off. Then the pre-draft comes, and you don't have to work out for anybody because you're already slated to go number one.
Yeah.
So you're not like some of these other guys that has 17 and 18 workouts for different teams. So you don't have to work out for anyone. You don't have to go play in these pre-draft camps in Chicago or Portsmouth and all these other things. So now you're not playing there. Then the draft comes and you get drafted. Now you're flying out to New Orleans. You're doing interviews. There's so many other things that are going on at the time that are ahead of basketball as far as the priority list. So now when it's time to get back to playing basketball, you haven't played in quite some time. I was watching the Knicks game last night, and they said R.J. Barrett hadn't played basketball in close to 2.5 months.
Wow.
That, and I understand it. I understand
the
draft process and how that works. So that's just the way it is. But believe me, it's a matter of time before Zion gets back in shape, gets back into the conditioning that he needs to have to endure an 82-game season. Because I tell you what, the one thing I know about Alvin Gentry, outside of the fact that he's a really good coach, is when you come into training camp, you better be in shape because these boys are going to get up and down the floor.
Yeah, nobody's going to play with faster pace. I guess, I love hearing that, Antonio, because it actually makes Zion's performance even more impressive than if he was able to do that without balling for a while.
Antonio, last one before we get you out of here. Just watching some of this summer league play and the experience that you have in the league, what will be the process for a guy like Kavell Bigby Williams who came in on a short contract and within the first 2 games has made a really nice impact?
Well, the thing that guys need to understand is you're not just you're auditioning for 29 other teams. When you're out there and you're playing, you're trying to open eyes somewhere.
Yeah.
You want another team out there, even if it's not the team that you're currently playing on for this roster. You know what, man? This guy can bring something to our team. This guy can bring something to our organization. We can put this guy on our bench and be confident that he can add something to what we want to build around. So I love Frank Jackson. I've been saying this for quite some time. I love Frank Jackson. 1 year of NBA experience, really, and I think he is just scratching the surface.
Antonio, this was great, man. We look forward to doing this again.
For sure. Thanks, fellas.
Thanks so much, Antonio. Antonio Daniels, follow him at ADaniels33. He's actually a really good Twitter follow.